Another theory that is usually produced is evolutionary epistemology. So again, epistemology is our theory of knowledge, how we know things. A naturalistic approach that applies evolution to the process of knowing. The theory proposes that the human mind is a product of natural selection. So, you have a million different species from you, and at some point, there's I don't even know how to reduce the mind to something less mindless. So mind n minus one, it would be, your ancestors, and then all of a sudden, poof, you have your mind state, I guess. So the human mind is this product of natural selection. We're selected for survival, but not for truth value. So again, this is kind of Dawkins' point, especially in the God delusion, is that whatever is produced is by necessity a value for survival. Obviously, he doesn't apply this to religion. Currently, he wants to apply it to back then, whatever back then is. This evolutionary epistemology says that the human mind is a product of natural selection, so it's for survival.
So if it's a product of natural selection, then everything is geared toward survival.
Right.
That's the basic idea,
right.
The survival of the fittest kind of thing,
right?
And so everything is geared toward survival. And so minds were selected for, notice, even our minds were selected for their survival value, right? So that's all that they're there for.
Right.
And not what?
Not for truth. Right.
Not for truth.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I've used this example before, is that you're out mowing your lawn and you see the wind kind of shake the tall grass, and that's a snake out there. I better stay away. Well, okay, that's not true. It's just the wind going through it, but you reacted in such a way because your 20th degree ancestor survived because they thought that there was snakes in grass, rather than thinking there weren't snakes, because then they were able to survive. And so you have this through the lineage. You're always thinking there's snakes in the grass. So it may not be true, but it helps you to survive.
It's survival value. Right. Yeah.
So let's apply this then to itself. When we do that, when we say that evolutionary epistemology is true, is that then a product of natural selection and a product for survival value and not a truth claim? Well, then, if so, it discredits its own truth. Evolutionary epistemology then commits suicide.
Because you can't say it's true. All you can say
it's good for survival.
It's good for survival.
Right.
Yeah, you can't say that it's true because, how do we know? How would we even know that?
Right.
Right.
And how do you check it? How do you evaluate two different competing theories? You'd have to say
every check would be a result of being selected for survival.
Right.
Of that.
Right. And it's only for you as that organism. It's not. You can't even really talk about a general species. We can't say all humans should have this survival aspect of evolutionary epistemology, because maybe for me, my survival is taking a different evolutionary approach, and so I shouldn't hold this. It would be not necessarily wrong, but would not be advantageous to my survival. Is what
right.
Two competing theories would be.
In other words, if I drop the rock, I believe it's going to fall. Well, that may or may not be true. That belief is a result of survival value. I don't know whether or not that's true, right? All I know is it's good for me to have that belief in order so that I can survive.
Right.
And so all of my beliefs, all of my minds were selected for survival and not necessarily for truth. Now, they may be true.
Right.
But
coincidence.
We don't know that.
Right. By coincidence.
Yeah. And so survival value becomes king. And of course, then the theory of it itself, evolutionary epistemology, was selected for survival value. And so we can't know whether it's true.
Right. It's helpful to our survival somehow. I don't know how, but we'll know in the future. So Francis Crick, very famous, would go on to write, "Our highly developed brains, after all, were not evolved under the pressure of discovering scientific truth, but only to enable us to be clever enough to survive." But that means Crick's own theory is not a scientific truth, applies to itself. The theory commits suicide.
So sorry, Crick, your theory is only devised so that we're clever enough to survive.
Right.
It's not a truth.
Erich Fromm says sometimes you are more likely to survive and propagate if you believe a falsehood than if you believe the truth. And so actually trying to get other people to believe things that aren't that may be true but not advantageous to survival would be I don't know necessarily immoral, but it would be disadvantaged them to surviving.
Yeah.
So trying to communicate any new idea to anybody could potentially lead them to their ultimate death and their cutting off of their continuing the species. So we should stop all conversation.
Or if even if it's false, if it contributes to survival value, it's a good thing, right?
Right. We can never know which ideas are true and which are adaptive but false. To make the dilemma even more puzzling, evolutionists tells us that natural selection has produced all sorts of false concepts in the human mind, and that's definitely true. All these false ideas were selected for their survival. So how can we know whether the theory of evolution itself is one of those false ideas? Again, the theory undercuts itself.
Is it true or is it adaptive but false? Mm-hmm. We don't know.
Right. And it's not just these lower level, snake in the grass, rock falls. It's everything. Everything. Yeah. This is an attempt to explain every truth claim, and that's this evolutionary epistemology. A few thinkers, to their credit, recognize the problem. Leon Westier writes, "If reason is a product of natural selection, then how much confidence can we have in rational argument for natural selection? Evolutionary biology cannot invoke the power of reason, even as it destroys it."
Oops.
Yeah. Thomas Nagel, who we talked about before, said, Is the evolutionary hypothesis really compatible with the continued confidence in reason as a source of knowledge? His answer is no. I have to be able to believe that I follow the rules of logic because they are correct, not merely because I'm biologically programmed to do so. Hence, insofar as the evolutionary hypothesis itself depends on reason, it would be self-undermining. So we don't.
Even these folks, even Nagel, who is an atheist, recognizes the problem.
Right.
And he acknowledges it.
He would want to be the first one to say, "Yep, this is the case." But he also wants to be correct and have an argument and believe true things and wants to believe the most amount of true things. And so he just doesn't want to survive. He wants to know truth, and this is the only way to do so.